Too much variant. Yeah, fair enough, fair enough. Bow, bow, bow.
So something I've been thinking about is like, and currently I don't moderate for anything that has really long categories. Or rather, I guess I technically could theoretically if someone did NG mission mode in Bleach, but I'd also have to discuss that with the other mods. I am a big fan of the idea of breaks in really long categories just for the sake of like hand health, etc. I wish this guy had spawned like anywhere else.
Yeah, I had a long conversation with Glitch and DBK about this. It's pretty interesting.
What game in particular?
Just the idea in particular.
Oh, okay.
We were talking about if a run was 10 hours. We gave that as a measurement. And we said, would it be... I was on the side of, if a run was 10 hours, I would say north of 8 hours especially. But in this particular argument, we were talking about 10 hours. There should be, like, a designated break that, like, lets you do that. Where you get, like, a... I don't know, like a 5-minute or a 2-minute or whatever.
Even if it's just to like stretch,
your necessities. Yeah, it's like stretch, bathroom, blah blah blah, all at one, and then it's just like you just kind of have that, and then you're like, cool, okay, good. You know, grab a snack out of the fridge if you need it or whatever. That vibe, and then everybody would have that time, and then if they didn't want to use that time, then that's fine. It doesn't matter. It's like completely exempt from the record anyway. There's no like advantage state, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But DBK'd and Glitched are on the side that it ceases to be RTA if you pause it ever. And I was like, well, you have a designated break. It's not necessarily a pause. It's basically like a, I don't know what to call it. Like, almost like a split, where there's just a 5-minute guaranteed split.
Well, yeah.
The timer doesn't necessarily need to pause.
It is literally a matter of perspective, yeah.
And they were like, nah. And there wasn't really much to budge on there, because it's like, if that is the cornerstone of their belief, then there's no way to adjust for that.
Right.
But I was like, well, some games have this naturally, and some games don't. So, like, in KH1, they have natural cutscenes.
Yeah, and
so,
you just find the longest cutscenes, and there's your break.
Yeah, and so then I was like, well, in those games, that happens. And in other games, they do, you know, IGT, or the cutscene doesn't count towards the timer, or, like, various things that you can cheese the thing with. And they're like, yeah, and that happens. And that's because the way the game works. I'm like, yeah, but it feels iffy. Like, it feels weird that that's like game specific, where it's like some games have breaks and some do not have breaks. It's like, well, yeah, that's just part of the way the game works. Like, yeah, that's fair, but it's just like it's such a weird thing. But I was just like, yeah, I don't see why not. It doesn't provide any particular advantage. Like, well, it kind of does, because of people with better stamina, quote unquote, or whatever. I'm like, yeah, but this is like a health thing. At 10 hours, we were like referring to it as a health concern, where it was like, okay, well, at this point,
it probably would be at 10 hours, yeah.
So I was like, well, it would be a health concern, but they still didn't necessarily. But they're like, it's fine if you do it. They would just never do it, is what they said. And I was like, okay. And then my follow up to that was, well, what about creating